KELOLAND TV presents Veterans Voices, honoring those who serve.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for our Veterans Voices special. I'm Don Jorgensen.
And I'm Matt Holson. Over the next half hour, you'll hear inspirational stories of the veterans right here in KELOLAND. We talk with 3 generations of veterans about the current issues facing military members and what the future looks like for vets. We also talk with a woman who served during the Vietnam War and how women's roles in the military have changed over the decades.
Plus, we pay tribute to the veterans who have died and the lasting impact they've had here in KELOLAND. Matt and I are honored to be sharing these stories with you, both as journalists and as veterans ourselves. I've served 22 years in the South Dakota National Guard, am a retired major, and was deployed to help out in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina.
And I served in the United States Marine Corps and was deployed in support of Operation Enduring Freedom.
The South Dakota Air National Guard has graciously agreed to host this special inside one of its hangars. And joining me now is Captain Jessica Bach with the 114th Fighter Wing. Thanks for being with us. Talk a little bit about the history of the South Dakota Air National Guard.
The South Dakota Air National Guard was founded by Medal of Honor recipient General Joe Foss, and it was founded in 1946. And since then, we've had a long history of providing fighter air power to the United States military, from the P-51 Mustang to the A-7 and now to the F-16 you see behind us here.
How many members are in the South Dakota Air National Guard?
The South Dakota Air National Guard has over 1,000 members, and that's made up of full and part-time members throughout the state of South Dakota, and we also have members that commute in from all over the United States to be a part of this organization.
Well, tell us a little bit about the mission of the South Dakota Air National Guard.
The 114th Fighter Wing has multiple missions. So we provide defense support to civil authorities that can be through relief to natural disasters, providing protection to life and property. We also provide homeland defense, where we provide aerospace defense for the United States. And then we provide overseas contingency operations support, and we deploy worldwide.
And I know that the 114th Fighter Wing goes on all kinds of deployments. Where was the last place you've been?
Yeah, so we recently returned 335 airmen from overseas in Afghanistan in support of Freedom Sentinel. But it's pretty typical for us to be deploying airmen, throughout the world all the time. And so it's pretty typical to see us having air power and airmen and equipment every, 2 to 3 years deploying somewhere around the world.
Captain Jessica Bach, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for coming out today.
On Veterans Day, we honor those who have served or are serving to protect our country. This is also a good time to remember the struggles active service members and veterans face every day. I sat down with 3 Marines from different generations to see what's on their minds. These 3 Marine Corps veterans from World War II, Vietnam, and Afghanistan have each had different experiences.
Every war is a little different, every veteran's a little different.
From weeks at war on the island of Peleliu for 93-year-old T resident Carl Sampson to combat in Vietnam for Ronald Tottingham of Sioux Falls.
It seemed like everything in society was against us, and we didn't have any avenue to go to get support. So we just took our uniforms off, put them in the closet, and made a life for ourselves.
Eric Okers from Brandon is grateful things have changed.
There's a lot of support, especially within the veteran community, from vet to vet.
The former combat engineer got out of the Marines this year. He's married with 2 kids, has a job, and goes to school full-time to keep himself busy. Okers is also a part of the local Marine Corps League.
I'm absolutely prideful. I'm sitting here with 2 of the greatest generations that we've had, and to know that I was a part of that legacy, having these men beside me it's honorable.
While having a better roadmap for transitioning back to civilian life has been huge for Okers, Sampson says the love he receives from the general public means a lot.
Wearing a World War II cap, that I get many thank yous, handshakes, and breakfast and lunch paid for.
How does that make you feel?
Well, it makes me feel that they honored me.
Whether you served in the military in the 40s, 60s, or post 9/11, each veteran is worthy of respect for their sacrifice to the country.
Be proud of it, and we are. You'll never hardly see a Marine that'll hang his head and...
Always faithful. That's the key.
It wasn't until the mid-1990s that women were first allowed to serve in combat roles, but women have always played a vital role in all of our wars, including Vietnam. She wasn't dodging bullets or tossing live hand grenades, but she will tell you her job was gut-wrenching.
I think in and out processing was probably the hardest of the jobs I've had, simply because it was so depressing.
Linda Davis served in the Air Force during the height of the Vietnam War, but she was stationed stateside, handling the paperwork for those being shipped off to war.
I saw so many records going out. I mean, we just did piles and piles of records going out, and the records coming back were much smaller.
We caught up with Davis at this event in Sioux Falls earlier this month that was just for female veterans. Davis says after she got out of the service, she married a civilian who didn't understand how war could change a person.
It puts a whole different landscape on your life. And if you don't know this about the service, and a lot of civilians don't actually get it.
Even though it was tough watching people get shipped off to war, knowing some of them wouldn't be coming home, she says her time in the military changed her in a good way.
Nothing ever remains the same. So if you're depressed and you want to end it all, tomorrow it's going to be different. The day after that will be different again. So you got to plug through and just keep looking for the changes, because they'll come. I wouldn't trade in my experiences in life for anything. It's made me a better person.
We're just getting started with our Veteran Voices special.
Coming up after the break, KELOLAND.com reporter Michael Guerin joins us with a look back at Mission 6 of Midwest Honor Flight. Welcome back to our Veterans Voices special. 1 month ago, more than 120 Vietnam War vets took the trip of a lifetime as they traveled to Washington, D.C. to see the memorials in their honor. It's a big thank you to many of these veterans who, when they first came back decades ago, were not welcomed home. Joining me now is KELOLAND.com reporter Michael Guerin, who flew on Mission 6 with Midwest Honor Flight. This was a long overdue welcome home. What did the veterans think of this trip?
Yeah, it was, I think, really impactful for them because they didn't get the welcome home that they deserved. So every step of the way throughout Washington, D.C., and especially coming back here to Sioux Falls, the welcome home was just very emotional.
That was a lot of fun to watch. What were some of your favorite stories from while you were in Washington, D.C.?
Oh, well, I had one where a guardian went, but he actually was a Vietnam veteran himself, and he went on the flight because as a guardian to help the other veterans because he didn't want to take the spot of someone else. I met someone who had a heart attack a few weeks before the flight and still went on it, and I followed a group of veterans from Gregory to the Vietnam Wall, where they found a cousin and classmate on the wall, and that was very emotional and a very interesting experience.
I think that's what maybe set this apart from some of the other missions that they've done is there were so many emotions wrapped up into this trip.
There was. The getting to that wall was huge. It was very impactful. And then there were so many veterans on it too, 120, which is the biggest honor flight that they've had. And it was a lot of people and a lot of fun.
Well, it's just a great program. I know I enjoy the healing and closure that it brings to some of the veterans.
Well, on the flight home, there was a lot of people talking, singing, sharing stories that they've never shared before. And the person who was sitting next to me on the flight said, the healing starts right now.
Well, thank you for joining us. And if you want to see some of Michael's coverage of Mission 6 of Midwest Honor Flight, just go to KELOLAND.com. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. This year, Sioux Falls lost a legend. Claude Hone leaves behind a lasting legacy in KELOLAND.
He was a World War II fighter pilot and original member of the South Dakota Air National Guard. Hone's generosity will be felt for generations, especially with his donations to the YMCA Leif Erikson Day Camp.
Hone would routinely donate money to allow kids to attend the camp, especially since he never got to when he was a kid. Hone was 99.
Another veteran we're honoring is 94-year-old Melvin Brockberg of Pipestone, Minnesota.
Melvin was on the Midwest Honor Flight earlier this year. However, his trip was tragically cut short. The Korean War vet got sick when he stopped off the plane near our nation's capital and couldn't recover. He died with his family by his side in Virginia.
I sat down with Brockberg's sons, who say they don't regret their dad taking the flight because it was a final tour with honor.
He was happy, healthy. Everything else is all smiles ear to ear.
Sitting around a table filled with memories of their dad, Gary and David Brockberg can't help but think about how excited Army Corporal and Korean War veteran Melvin Brockberg was to be on Mission 5 of Midwest Honor Flight.
Sometimes you almost get to the point, come on, Dad, enough is enough. Let's get on with it. But he would not stop.
The 94-year-old retired farmer waited 3 years for the opportunity. These are photos of Melvin at the banquet the night before the flight. David, his guardian for the trip, says he was raring to go on the morning of September 24th, but things changed when they arrived in Virginia.
We got in the terminal about 50 feet, and then it started bad there.
Melvin recovered and made it to Arlington National Cemetery, but then got sick again. He would be taken by ambulance to a nearby hospital, where he later died on Thursday morning.
Very shocking, totally unexpected.
David and Gary, who flew out immediately, say doctors don't know exactly what happened, but that Melvin was battling respiratory issues.
Do you regret putting him on this flight?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I wouldn't change anything. I would change the outcome, but I would never change him going. He may have not seen the sights out there, but he had the anticipation of going out there. He had talked about it to everybody for months and months in advance. He's looking forward to it immensely.
During their time of mourning, Melvin's sons are focusing on gratitude.
Honor Flight guys were fantastic. They stayed with me all the time, day and night.
An Honor Flight volunteer even took the men to the memorials their father missed, including the Korean War Memorial.
Yep. And you're there without him. What was that like?
Kind of
Melvin will be deeply missed, but forever remembered. He leaves behind 4 children, 8 grandchildren, and more.
It really hurts that way, I'll say, but I mean, and every Sunday, that was our go out and check the crop day.
Welcome back. This year, Sioux Falls lost a legend. Claude Hone leaves behind a lasting legacy in KELOLAND.
He was a World War II fighter pilot and original member of the South Dakota Air National Guard. Hone's generosity will be felt for generations, especially with his donations to the YMCA Leif Erikson Day Camp.
Hone would routinely donate money to allow kids to attend the camp, especially since he never got to when he was a kid. Hone was 99. Welcome back to our final segment of Veterans Voices. The former Badlands Pond building in Sioux Falls could soon become a hub for veteran services.
Both the VFW and American Legion are considering moving to the facility along West Russell Street. The nonprofit South Dakota Military Heritage Alliance is working to purchase the building from businessman Chuck Brennan. The group's plan is to convert the building into a veteran and military support center. Work is also moving along on the new state veteran cemetery in northeast Sioux Falls.
Crews broke ground back in September. The cemetery is located on a 60-acre site near where Interstates 90 and 229 meet. Landscaping and construction is expected to be completed in 2021. According to the South Dakota Department of Veterans Affairs, the state is home to more than 72,000 veterans, and around 50,000 live in the eastern part of the state. A naval landmark in Sioux Falls that just turned 50 years old this summer is going through sort of a midlife crisis.
Now, the Battleship Memorial, which was dedicated in August of 1969 as a tribute to the crew of the USS South Dakota, is running out of space to house exhibits. Now, the memorial wants to go full steam ahead with its plans to expand.
KELOLAND's Perry Groten explains.
The Battleship Memorial is a star-spangled showcase of the USS South Dakota, the most decorated battleship of World War II. But it's what you don't see inside the display cases that's getting a lot of attention from the museum staff.
71 U.S. battleships, seagoing battleships in the history of U.S. Navy, and this is just one story.
Tucked away inside the museum, far from public view, are thousands of documents, maps, mementos, and artifacts, including this hand-drawn chart of a 1944 battle between the South Dakota and Japanese ships in the Pacific Ocean.
It's a first-hand account of the ship maneuvering against the enemy and firing against the enemy.
There's also a flag the South Dakota flew whenever an admiral would board the ship.
They'd fly that flag to let everybody know that they're there and their location within the fleet. So pretty interesting to have that in this collection.
It's Chris Tucker's job to catalog everything inside the Battleship Memorial. It turns out just as many museum pieces are stored away as are on display.
My initial count of everything on display is about 3,000. There's another 3,000 that's underneath everything in storage. And that's just the small things.
That's because after 50 years of accumulating USS South Dakota-related artifacts, there's no more room left to show them all.
We have much more than we can display. As you look around in here, you can see how full it is.
And the items keep coming in. As World War II veterans die, their families offer to give the museum everything from old photos and service records to uniforms.
And some people say, we'll donate something if you put it on display. And I say, I can't promise to display it because in order to put anything else up, we'd have to take something down.
The Battleship Memorial Board wants to add more space for their exhibits. So the goal is to build a new entrance to the south side of the museum, which will provide more room for displays.
So we'll have a 35 by 40 foot room that we can expand, spread out, curate so that we have different sections that apply to different things.
The plan is to even add a theater to the museum. This isn't the first time the Battleship Memorial has gone through growing pains. The museum has expanded twice before during its first 50 years.
The original was this round area here, and they had fundraisers and buildings. They built the east section on, and then they built the west section on. And all these years it's been a repository for the sailors who were actually on the ship.
But as the Battleship Memorial launches into its second half century, Diekman says the focus will have to shift as aging sailors pass the torch to future generations who want to learn about their heroics and stories about the proud legacy of the USS South Dakota.
So this is a huge responsibility because we're in charge of these stories. And if we let these stories die, that's on us.
That's all the time we have for our Veterans Voices special.
Thank you to all the active military members, veterans, and their families for their service and sacrifice. For more information about these and other stories that we have covered throughout the year about veterans, head to KELOLAND.com.
Thanks for joining us, and have a good night.